Still works. Imagine a world not too long ago, maybe up until the late 80s. Imagine a world without mobile phones and the internet. How would you know there's an explosion in Beirut, there's a forest fire in Australia, or there's a breakout of Ebola in Africa? To a large extent, people got information from shortwave radios. Now, I thought about making a video to talk about radios in general. You see, radios and I have a special bond. My father spent quite a few years of his professional life as a marine radio officer, and I was fortunate enough to go sailing on some of the ships he would work on. That's the photo of me and my father goofing around in one of the ship's radio room. And I used to see him using VHF, the strange VHF lingo, or maybe decipher a Morse code, and I was fascinated. I really was. I made a radio transmitter, an FM transmitter in my late teens, and I used to transmit on the VHF broadcast frequencies. I'm pretty sure it was illegal, but anyway, it was a really poor transmitter, so I'm sure the signal would not have gone beyond my house. Anyway, so yeah, I wanted to specifically talk about shortwave radio listening today. But before we go into that, let's learn about what radios are. To put it very simply, to explain to you that you'll understand very quickly, radio waves are vibrations, right? And of course, the easiest way for me to provide you an analogy about radio waves is with sound waves. Sound waves, as you know, are also vibrations, and these vibrations have a characteristics, namely how quickly they vibrate or their frequency. So, as you know that we can hear probably everything between 20 to 20,000 hertz, especially if you're young. So, if I say, for example, hello, testing 1, 2, 3, and you know by listening, oh, that's my voice, that's me transmitting a voice over to you, which you can hear. Now, if I say
testing 1, 2, 3,
you would know that that's a different frequency. That's a female voice, so that's at a higher frequency, and your ears can tune out the two, right? And that's what a radio does. I mean, if you're musically gifted or if you have a really good ear, you might be able to tell them apart even when they are spoken simultaneously. For example, if we say now, hello, testing 1, 2, 3. You would probably still be able to say, well, there are actually two frequencies here, and you can tell them apart. A radio does the same thing. It has a lot of frequencies to receive, but when you change the dial, when you select a particular frequency, when you say, red FM 93.5, you're basically choosing the frequency. That's 93.5 megahertz. So now this is where the similarity between radio wave and sound wave ends. Yes, they are both waves, they are both vibration trains, and they travel distances between a transmitter like me or radio station and a receiver like your ear for audio waves and a radio receiver for radio waves. Everything else is different. First of all, your ear cannot pick out radio waves, so the radio station, the transmitting station, actually incorporates or adds information about the audio onto the radio wave itself in a process called modulation. When you say that's 93.5 FM, you actually means frequency modulation. That's a type of modulation, or the way in which you add the audio information to the radio wave. And the radio set does the reverse. It captures the radio waves, tunes the particular frequency, and then demodulates it. It extracts that audio information and plays it out on a speaker. That's what it does. Speaking of radio waves and vibrations, radio waves actually have an almost infinite range of these vibrations. You have an entire spectrum of the radio waves. On one side you have the extremely low frequencies, the VLFs, and then as you move forward you have the long waves, and probably then the short waves. You also have VHF. VHF is probably the most common frequency range which we are still using, where we know that we are actually using radio waves. This is the broadcast frequency. For example, all the FM stations would be in the VHF range. And then as you move ahead, you get to ranges where your mobile phones operate in, the UHF ranges. And as you go forward, you get microwaves and a whole lot of phenomena that remains beyond the scope of this video. Now, I'm specifically here to talk about, so unlike sound waves, which one, it can travel, if it's loud enough, a kilometer maybe. That's the propagation characteristics of sound waves, right? It doesn't travel really far, so unlike radio waves. Now, propagation characteristics of radio waves is amazing. It really is. The low frequencies, you can transmit it around the globe. I can have a transmitter here and I can transmit information halfway around the world, no problem. In fact, India maintains several, or at least one, not several, VLF or extremely low frequency. I believe there are VLF transmitting stations by which they can communicate with our submerged submarines anywhere. Doesn't matter where that submarine is, whether it's on the surface or underwater. The Indian Navy can communicate with them using these extremely low frequencies because they travel far. And as you increase your frequency, you get the short waves, which again are not as long distance traveling as the very low waves, but still you can have short waves under good atmospheric conditions which can travel around the globe, or at least over several continents. And then you come to VHF, which is used by a local FM station, which basically work by line of sight, which means that it transmits within the city. Fine, you can receive it anywhere within Calcutta or the suburbs, but once you are over that horizon, you cannot receive it anymore. So that's why you cannot receive FM station from Chennai over in Kolkata. You just can't. And it's not something to do with the power of the transmitter. It's just that the VHF travels in straight lines, and no matter how much power you give it, it will not bend over the horizon. It would rather transmit out into free space. That's not the case with shortwaves. Shortwave has a very peculiar property. There are upper regions within the Earth's atmosphere which are basically reflecting to the shortwaves. So what happens is, if you transmit a shortwave and it's powerful enough, it can reflect back and forth between the Earth's surface and those atmospheric layers, and it can travel very long distances. Again, under right conditions, halfway around the world, no problem. Even in poor conditions, at least several thousand kilometers. So before we had internet, we had shortwave radio. Very big, very well-known broadcasters like BBC, Voice of America, and including All India Radio used to transmit news and information on shortwave radios. They still do, some of them still do. And these shortwave broadcasts would be picked up almost anywhere around the world, and that's how you would get your international news and your international information. Now, one of the problems with using shortwave radio as a broadcast service is that shortwave radios tend to be very fickle in their transmission characteristics. So, for example, especially during the night, it might be very easy for you to pick up a transmission from Egypt or from Egypt, and maybe in the day you receive nothing. And the broadcasters always wanted to know how far is my radio wave transmitting? How far away can you reasonably receive my broadcast? Whether my viewers like them, and all sorts of information about viewership, right? And there was no easy way of doing that because I just could not, for the large part, write an email to them that, well, this is how you receive them, or call them up. So they depended on they would depend on the listeners to provide that feedback, right? So they would expect listeners to write to the broadcasters saying that, oh look, I received your signal on the 4th of July at 9 p.m. I'm located in this part of the world, and my receiving apparatus is like this, and that's my antenna. So, and by doing so, the broadcast would know, oh, okay, so I know I transmit from Cairo, I'm the Egyptian broadcasting service, and I know I have a viewer in India who can reasonably tune into my frequency, and that's an important piece of information. You know how far your radio waves have actually transmitted or traveled. Now, why would a viewer do that, right? Why would a viewer send in this reception report to the broadcaster? Well, the broadcasters used to incentivize these reception reports by giving them a card, a sort of a thank you card, what in radio parlance is known as a QSL card. It's a confirmation of reception sent to the listener in appreciation of the fact that he has sent in a reception reports to the broadcaster. Now, what is a QSL? Why does it say QSL? Well, it's not an abbreviation. QSL doesn't stand for anything. It's a code. It's a code which basically means I confirm your reception report. You see, before we had radios which can transmit audio signals, modulation, as I talked about. Before people learned how to do that, there was no audio over the radio waves, right? It was either, it was mostly like telegraph, a series of dots and dashes to spell out each word. And it was really tedious, you know, it was really tedious to actually spell out a sentence. And if I have to say, I confirm your reception, you don't want to dot and dash out the entire sentence. You want the communication to be fast. So they came up with a lot of codes, and QSL is just one of them. This is what a QSL card looks like. This one is from the national broadcaster in Iran. That's generally they come with a photo of that nation's heritage or the broadcast or some trivia about the broadcaster, and on this side you'll actually have the name and the date and the frequency in which at which I received and the details that I sent in the reception report. So that's how you get QSL cards. Now that we have internet and other technologies, we have stopped relying on shortwaves. Big broadcasters like BBC and Voice of America still, and including All India Radio, still transmit over shortwave, but largely catering to places where they do not have access to a lot of technology like internet. But other than that, shortwave is dying down. And several years back, in fact just 5 years back, when I was living in Jamshedpur, I decided that in a few years shortwave would cease to exist, right? People will stop transmitting in shortwave, and we will no longer have these QSL cards. People like me, we tend to collect things. So I wanted to collect a few QSL cards before people forgot what a QSL card is. And so I made this radio for myself. It's a bit of a cheat. It's not, I have used some ICs which makes the job a lot easier. But the important part with shortwave reception is an antenna. As you can see, I live in an apartment surrounded by buildings on all sides. So I essentially have no shortwave reception in this house. But in my previous apartment where I lived, I could actually make a long wire antenna and hang it outside. And I got pretty good, decent shortwave reception. the next slideshow that you'll see is actually me sharing my collection of QSL cards with my friends and followers. I hope you'll enjoy them. Modern technology is awesome, right? It has helped humanity do things that we could have never imagined. But here's my issue with the way we look at modern technology. When you use a mobile phone, you never think for one moment that you're actually using a radio. But that's what it is. It's a poorly engineered yet highly sophisticated radio. And we are running after modern technology without learning anything about the science and technology. And that's where my problem is. You're free to use your latest mobile phone or the latest laptop. That's fine. You have to do that. But don't treat them as a means to access social media. Try to appreciate and, if possible, learn about the science and technology behind it. When we were listening to shortwave radios as kids, it was just not listening to a source of entertainment. It was about learning about frequencies, about distances, about time signals, and what would be the propagation characteristics, what would be the latitude and longitude of the transmitting station and the receiving station, what would be the distance. I mean, we learned a lot when we were kids by the technology that surrounded us back then. And I see that missing at present. So please, the next time when you use a phone, think about how it works. Read up a little on radio waves, or not only radio waves, any science and technology topic that you want to. It will really be fun. You will enjoy it. You will learn something new, and you cannot put a price on that. So by all means, use social media and all the new technologies that you have around you. But try to learn a little more of the science and technology that goes behind it, okay? Goodbye.